want you to go to the Gospel of John, chapter 9. I feel the Lord gave me a message tonight from this beautiful, beautiful sign. Jesus did a lot of miracles, works of power. And John's Gospel calls them all signs. Because every miracle that he did, what is a sign? A sign is not the thing in itself. It's something that points to something greater. If you come into Cedar Rapids and you see a sign that says Cedar Rapids 25 miles, you don't stop right there and say, there we are, we're at Cedar Rapids. The sign's pointing to something bigger. All the miracles in John are called signs. They actually happen. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Just like Betty was saying. Everything in the book of Acts is for us today. The book of Acts doesn't end. It just cuts off because we're writing the last chapter. And all of these miracles of Jesus, they actually happen, they still happen, but they also point to something bigger. And that's the way this sign is, and let me see if I can walk us through this. It says, and Jesus passed by, verse 1, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Well, that's a good question. What went wrong, in other words? What went wrong? Was it him or was it his parents? Well, the answer, which Jesus doesn't even go into here, but that is a good question. That's a valid question. Anyone here ever trying to figure yourself out? Where did I go wrong? Most of the world, unfortunately, embraces the lies of psychology, which supposedly answers those questions. They'll tell you where you went wrong. Usually it's your parents. That's what they'll say. It's your parents. They screwed you up. The truth is, you couldn't go back far enough to find out where you went wrong. And the answer of where you went wrong might not satisfy you. Where did we go wrong? In the Garden of Eden. That's where I went wrong. And no one's been all right ever since. Someone says, we were raised in a dysfunctional family. There hasn't been a functional family since the fall, okay? There hasn't been a perfectly right angle since the fall. Everything's screwed up. So it's a waste of time to keep on thinking, where did I go wrong? Jesus doesn't have you looking back because you can't get back to the garden and undo where you went wrong. You ever notice that? He put a flaming angel in front of the garden. There is just no way you'll ever get back to the garden. There's no way you can go back into your past and make right what's wrong with you. Just no way. Instead, he points us to heaven. This is one good slogan right here. If I was going to make a bumper sticker, I'd make this slogan. You can't go to the garden, but you can go to heaven. You can't go back there and get straightened out, but you can look ahead, and Jesus is going to straighten everything out. You know, when we get to heaven, Jesus is going to personally wipe all the tears from our eyes. Is that not beautiful? Hallelujah. Who you let wipe tears off your eyes? You haven't done that since your mama, right? But your Savior and Creator is going to wipe your tears off your eyes. It's a waste of time. That's what Jesus said. Neither this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be manifest in him. In other words, the point is not who went wrong, what went wrong. God is going to do a work through this. And that's one beautiful thing about God. He can take all your brokenness and do a great work if you let him. That'll never happen if you're stuck in the past. But if you let God. Jesus said, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night comes when no one can work. Well, the next verse he mentions day and night. This is a continuation from my theme last week of light and darkness. Light and darkness, day and night. He says we must work the works of him that sent us while it's day. Night comes. No one can work. There's day and there's night. And one of the things he's saying is that there is a limit, a set amount of time that you're given to get to the light. The soul, from the beginning, was made to open up to light. Now, there's many devices in this world designed to keep people in darkness, to shut out the light. You see what I'm saying? You only have so much time, he says. Night comes when no one can work. And then he said, verse 5, as long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. It's beautiful, isn't it? Then what? Verse 6. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spit. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. What a beautiful, beautiful miracle. Jesus spits and makes clay and puts it in the eyes of the blind man. See, there's a great connection between the Gospel of John and the book of Genesis. They both start with, in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then John starts, in the beginning was the Word. They're connected. And God made everything and it was good. But somewhere between Genesis 1 and John 9, something really bad happened to screw and mess everything up. But as the Creator in the first creation, you notice this. Chris and I were talking about this last year when she was doing VBS about creation, that everything God made, he just spoke it into existence, except one thing, man. It's so personal. He gets down in the dirt, you might say. He gets his hands dirty and he forms us. And then he does something like mouth to mouth. He breathes into the body the breath of life, and man becomes a living soul. But the fall has marred us. But the Creator again picks up the dirt and spits on it and puts it into the eyes. And he said unto him, verse 7, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. So the word Siloam means sent. Okay. Go wash in the water of the sent. Now, Jesus is the one sent from heaven to make us whole. Jesus is the one sent from heaven to make us whole. The instruction is simple. Go wash in the water of Jesus, basically. Go wash in the water of Jesus. He went his way, therefore, and washed, and he came back seeing. Fantastic. He was blind, but now he sees. You ever notice that all our songs, a lot of them anyway, when they talk about salvation, they talk about blindness and seeing? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. I was blind, but now I see. How terrible it would be to be blind. You wouldn't know what you're stumbling over. You wouldn't know what's going on around you. And Jesus painted a terrible picture in one of his parables where he said, the Pharisees and the Sadducees are blind guides leading the blind. They act like they know what's going on. They act like they can see. So their very confidence just gets people behind them. Hand on shoulder, hand on shoulder, hand on shoulder, hand on shoulder. They'll take us, they'll get us there, they'll show us the way. He says they're all going to fall into the pit. The pit is hell. Now, there are many blind guides, right? But to be saved, one of the things about being saved is you can see again. It's like a big eye-opening experience. Now I get it. I was a sinner. I didn't know that God was real. I didn't know that Jesus was real. I didn't know why Jesus died for me. I didn't know that there was a church, a born-again church. I didn't know how to get to heaven or how to avoid going to hell until Jesus came and boom, he opened my eyes. And he gave me complete awareness. Because I was blind, but now I see. At the cross, where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith. What? I received my sight. And now I'm happy. All the day. Everyone wants to be happy, right? That's how people get in so much trouble. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be happy. You'd be sick if you didn't want to be happy. There'd be something twisted about you. Everyone wants to be happy. The problem is they don't know how. They don't even know what happiness is. But when I found Jesus, it was there by faith I received my sight. Now I'm happy all the day. But here's what happens when you get to seeing. What about all the people around you? Verse 8, the neighbors therefore, and they which before had seen him that was blind, said, is this the one that sat and begged? Some said, this is he. Others said, he's like him. But he said, no, I'm he. People look at someone that can see and they go, what? Who took my son? Who took my husband? What's the matter with him? Who does he think he is? They don't recognize him, see. He's not himself anymore, but the guy says, no, this is me. Therefore said they unto him, then how were your eyes opened? And he answered and said, a man that's called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said unto me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. Very simple. He didn't really know that much about it. That's how it all starts. You don't know that much about it when your eyes are open. The vision is progressive. You go from deep darkness to light, and it takes a while. The vision is progressive. For example, notice what he called Jesus? A man. A man that's called Jesus. Well, Jesus is a man. But you and I know he's a lot more than that, right? But he didn't. You know. Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. I went and washed, and I received sight. Then said they unto him, where is he? Well, I don't even know. How many know when you're first saved, you don't know much? People ask you questions. I don't know. They brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind. Now let me stop. Pharisee means, that's a name of a sect. It means something. What does the word Pharisee mean? It means separated ones. That's the meaning of holiness. Okay, separate, to be separate unto God. The Pharisees were the back to the Bible movement of their day, and they were going to separate themselves unto God and from everything evil and from all defilement. And their separation was going to go like this. They were going to be the ones that kept every one of the 613 laws of God in the law of Moses, and they were not going to be defiled by any contact with anyone or anything unclean. That was their plan. That's how they were going to get to heaven. That's how they were going to be super spiritual. And they were sure that they could see. All right. So, they bring him to the Pharisees. You know, they're blind, so they go to their guides. Now, it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Well, here's one of the things about the Pharisees and about Judaism in general. That God gave the law of God, and the law of God is good. All of the word is good. Old Testament, New Testament, all fantastic. And the law of God is liberating. The law of God is so liberating, James calls it the perfect law of liberty. It's supposed to set people free to be fully human. So God gave a law to set us free. 6 days shall you labor, and on the seventh is the Sabbath, you shall rest, right? But the Pharisees said, okay, we really want to keep this, so what is the meaning of work? Can you light a fire? Can you pick up a suitcase? How far can you walk? I mean, you literally read in the Bible, it was a Sabbath day's journey away. What do you mean a Sabbath day's journey? Anything past 1,000 steps, that's work. You can't do it. Okay, by the time they were done with that one law, they had concocted 1,200 sub-laws governing the Sabbath. You were so glad when Sabbath was over, where you could get back to sane life, that you couldn't wait for the day that's passed. See what that does? You take something God intended to be a blessing, and you just crush people with it. They were so learned, they could see. They knew the word. Yeah, but they're blind. There's a warning in the Bible. Jesus said, the light of the body is the eye. If your eye is whole, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is evil, and the light that's in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? What's he saying? He's saying that the eye is for light. Let the light in. And if you do, if there's nothing hindering the light, you're going to be all right. But if you think you know, and your knowledge isn't truth, you're worse off than any other blind man. It's one thing to be blind and know it. It's another to think you know and you don't. Okay. Be careful of the light. Make sure it's the truth. He said, the Pharisees take note of the fact that it's a Sabbath day. Now, what's more restful than a man that never saw his whole life finally seeing? I mean, if you ask me, that's Sabbath, right? That's shalom. But not to them. Verse 15, then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight, and he said unto them, he put clay on my eyes, and I washed and do see. So he gets a witness. He gets to give his testimony. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God. They're talking about Jesus. This man is not of God, because he doesn't keep the Sabbath day. Others said, how can a man that's a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. The thing is, true light causes a division. True light divides people. People can't, Jesus is like a touchstone. You have any encounter with him at all, you're either going to be better or worse. You're not going to be the same. You either come too close to God, or you're going to go away from God. Your secrets of your heart, what you really think and feel about God, regardless of your religiosity, will all be exposed upon contact with Jesus. So he said, this man is not of God. But others weren't quite so set in their darkness. They said, wait a minute, though, how could he, if he was a sinner, how could he heal a man blind? How could he do the miracles? Verse 17, then they say unto the blind man again, what do you say of him? That he opened your eyes. He said, he's a prophet. You notice that his vision's getting clearer. He's not just a man. He's a prophet. He's of God. But the Jews didn't believe concerning him that he had been blind. How far will people go to not admit they're wrong? So far, in this case, that they said, you were never blind. You liar. You were never blind. Well, unbelief is warned about in the Bible. It's stunning that evidence can be right in front of people's eyes, or a person can be raised right in the truth, in the light, or a person can be shown without a shadow of a doubt. But miracles, signs, wonders, and evidence do not bring people to God. All they do is expose what people's hearts really are in the presence of God. These people saw a sign. A man they passed by every day in the temple, a beggar, a blind beggar. And they saw that with their own eyes, but what are they going to do is to not admit they're wrong? You were never blind. But the Jews didn't believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered them and said, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But by what means he now sees, we don't know. Or who opened his eyes, we don't know. He's of age. Ask him. He'll speak for himself." If you had a son born blind and a beggar in the temple and he was healed, would you not inquire of him how this happened? Are you telling me they're ignorant of who healed him? Well, we don't even have to speculate because the text goes on to say, no, they knew who healed him. They knew it was Jesus. Then when they were called up to testify, why didn't they say that? It says, "These words spake his parents because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue." So, that's another kind of darkness, fear. I've been thinking a lot lately about what's happening spiritually in our country and how this thing that is called political correctness, it silences people from truth that is just so obvious. And you have to be quiet or you'll be censored, you'll be rejected, you'll be put out of the synagogue, or you'll be considered a hater or a racist or something. So people have to remain silent even though they know something's true. And when you do that, that takes away part of your soul. You lose your soul by not acknowledging truth in the face of a lie. Okay? Lies are corrupting. They're powerful. They're to be resisted. You're not to be passive about it. Or we can't say, they'll kick us out of the synagogue. So people have to stand around and listen to lie after lie after lie. I do declare we live in the day of the lie. Islam is a religion of peace. Gay parents are as good a parents as straight parents. Blah, 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 blah. And people are self-correcting even. And when it comes to words, the reason that's dangerous is because words aren't just words. Words come out of your heart. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what's in your heart? Your thoughts. So basically, it's an assault on your soul, on the deepest part of you. This generation is actually making war on the souls of men. And as I've said many times before, they're not going to be content with you not saying what you know to be true. The spirit of Antichrist is going to push people into saying what they know isn't true. And that's how they deny Christ. And that's how they lose their souls. Think of these parents, how happy you'd be if your child who was born blind, the heartache of a child born blind, the heartache of the special kind of degraded life, a beggar at the temple gate, unable to do what any son or daughter would, and then he's healed? And you want to shout it from the mountaintops. Who did this? Jesus did. But when they came into the presence of the Pharisees, here's what the Lord showed me. They're literally coming into darkness that can be felt. Intimidation, fear. People project what they hate. And the Pharisees already hated the idea that Jesus is the Christ. Who healed your son? I don't know. Boy, you'd have to be scared to do that. Because I could care less This is like this big gorilla thing. I'd shoot 18 gorillas if it saved my kid. But we live in a nation of blind men. They want to press charges on the parents. Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind? Well, I suppose once you buy into abortion, then there is no difference between the value of a gorilla and a baby, right? This is an evil generation. Very, very blind, very dark. This story has much application. Let me move along here. These words spake his parents, verse 22, because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. It's a well-known fact. If you say Jesus is Christ, you're out. And by the way, if you're out of the synagogue, you are out socially, probably financially, probably professionally. You're shunned. So they just said, he's of age, ask him. There's a special kind of fear designed to make cowards of us, and take away our faith, take away our soul. The fear and intimidation against speaking truth. Verse 24, then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. See, they want to make him confess that Jesus is a sinner. That's the spirit of Antichrist wants to do. Make you confess what you know isn't true. He answered and said, whether he be a sinner or not, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. This is one thing about this guy. He doesn't claim to know that much. What he does know, he stands by, though. Then they said to him again, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And he answered them, I told you already that you didn't hear. Wherefore would you hear it again? Will you also be his disciples? He challenged, are you trying to be his disciple? You want me to tell you again? Then they reviled him and said, you're his disciple, but we're Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we don't know where he's from. Now, by the way, that's a loaded thing that they said. When they said we don't know where he's from, they're not talking about what town he's from. They're bringing up the circumstances of his birth. In other words, they're saying he's a bastard. He was born out of wedlock. And in the law of Moses, a bastard couldn't even go into the temple. So this is a very, very pointed contrast, because what I want to show you in this chapter, which was written by the Holy Spirit, that as this moves along under the pressure, under the persecution, this poor man's eyesight gets better and better and better and better, and they get blinder and blinder and blinder and blinder. First they call Jesus a sinner. Well, no, first they say he's not of God. Then they say he's a sinner. Then they say he's a bastard. This is very intense. Now, he says, we don't know where he came from. The man answered and said to them, well, here is a marvelous thing. You don't know where he came from, is what it literally says. Yet he opened my eyes. Now we know that God will not hear sinners. But if any man be a worshiper of God and does his will, him he hears. Well, the guy doesn't know that much, but he does know some things, right? It's pretty good theology. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. They answered and said unto him, you were altogether born in sin, and do you teach us? And they cast him out. In other words, literally, they didn't believe in original sin, Pharisees. So when they say you were born in sin, they're not saying we're talking about the doctrine of original sin. They're saying, you're a bastard too. And they threw him out of the synagogue. These are the shepherds. These are the blind guides. These are the experts and the theologians and the leaders. And you can almost see a long line of people, hands on shoulders, follow these guys. They know what they're doing as they lead the whole nation to hell. Well, it went on. Jesus heard that they cast him out. And when he found him, he said unto him, Do you believe on the Son of God? And he answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? By his sight's getting even clearer. First he called him a man. Then he saw that he's a prophet. Then he said he's of God. Now he sees he's Lord. And he answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe in him? And Jesus said unto him, You've both seen him, and it's he that talks to you. Now his vision is complete. Jesus is the Son of God. The most important thing about you and me is how we see God and Jesus, and whether we see him rightly or wrongly determines the whole course of your life, everything about it. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. Isn't that beautiful? And Jesus said, For judgment I come into this world, that they which see not might see, and they which see might be made blind. And so I said, Jesus is like a touchstone. Any encounter with him, you either get your sight or you go blind. You go worse than you were before. You can't stay the same. Why? Because he's God. He's God, and there's only one proper reaction to God. Anything less is sin, and that is worship, and to follow God, and to let God restore your sight. It's the best thing of all, really. The best thing of all. That you know that you're blind. You know that you don't know that much. You know you're not an expert. This guy doesn't speak as an authority. Those guys spoke as the authority. They were the authorities. All this guy was a witness. I know what happened to me. Jesus got a hold of me. Jesus came into my life. Jesus opened my eyes. A man called Jesus. He's a prophet. Who is he? I don't know, he says. He isn't a sinner, though. That's one thing he did say. He couldn't be a sinner. And then he says, Do you believe in the Son of Man? Oh, Lord, I believe. I believe. The Son of God. He took that title. And then he worshiped him. But the others, this man is not of God. He breaks the law. Not the real law. One of the 1,200 laws that they concocted that made void the real law. For what was the law anyway but for a blessing so that people could love each other and love God? And then his parents, unfortunately they got blind. Once you won't confess something you know, then you lose part of yourself. You mean if your son was blind and he got sight, you wouldn't want to shout it from the mountaintops, Praise Jesus! Well, not them. It's too much to lose. Confessing Jesus. He's of age, ask him. And then these guys go, We know God spoke through Moses. And finally, they call Jesus a bastard. At some point, and I speak of this evil generation as well as individuals, some point is a crossover, a tipping point, where you can't get back. You know what I'm saying? You can't get back. You're not supposed to, well, I think of a televangelist who died last year and then his wife died today. And they would say to people, go to hell. If you believe in discernment, just go to hell. And they would champion every heresy and every false prophet and every false... They might have started off good. And the guy got so mad one time, he said, I don't go for that doctrinal... And he used the word for excrement. He called the truth of God's word excrement. Because they couldn't admit they were wrong. I don't know where they went, I don't know what happened to them. I hope something good, but what I'm saying is, blindness is designed to take you to the pit. There's some tripping point. They didn't just say he's a sinner. By the end, they're saying he's a bastard. And so is anyone that follows him. So, in the closing, here's the punchline. Verse 40, some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words, and they said to him, are we blind also? Are we blind? Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see. Therefore your sin remains. He said, I came, in verse 39, into this world, that they which see not might see, and they which see might be made blind. See, there's two kinds of blindness. The one, Jesus can heal. The other ends in the pit. There's being legitimately blind and knowing it. And then there's being willfully blind and insisting on it. Are we blind? You telling me we're blind? Jesus says, I wish you were blind. What's the meaning of 41? I wish you were blind. If you were blind, I could take away your sin. This distinction is not how great a sinner you are, or how bad you are, or how good you are, or how learned you are, or how stupid you are. The only distinction is if you're blind and you know it, or if you're blind and you think you know, you're not. He said, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see. We already know. We already got it. Therefore, your sin remains.